Becky Dinnin is the director of the Alamo Endowment. This session is called Reimagining the Alamo Endowment's role. If you don't know about the Alamo Endowment, it was created in 2011 as a private 501c3 nonprofit with the mission to support the Alamo. Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush reconstituted the board in 2015 and added several luminaries that you might have recognized their names before, like Red McCombs. These people are heavily involved in the Alamo today and its running, long-range planning, master planning process, and they're aided by Becky. Becky is the executive director of the Alamo Endowment and is appointed by the commissioner as the director. A native Texan, she can trace her history back to Independence, Texas, and Sarah Dodson, who sewed one of the first Texas flags. Becky has almost 30 years in nonprofit sector. She received her MBA from SMU and her BA from Baylor. Please help me in welcoming Becky Dinnin.
Before I get started, I think that it's really important as this last kind of session ends and we go and enjoy ourselves at the Woody. I want to say a personal thank you to Mark and James, where are you? They have put in hundreds and hundreds of hours into this event, and I think it's been spectacular. I just want to say a very special thank you. They work very hard in Austin and come to San Antonio quite often, and I depend on them to teach me the many, many, many chapters of things that I have no clue about, that is history and that is state. And David Little and the guys from the IT department, and back here on the camera we've got Keith. They are all the people who make the things at the GLO and at the Alamo behind the scenes happen and shine and sparkle. So just thank them when you get a chance. There are going to be videos of this, by the way, that are available on YouTube after all of these things, probably a little bit of editing. And so I just wanted those. I've heard that question several times, so if y'all have that and want to pass it around with your Facebook or YouTube or something, that is going to be available so that we can help spread the word about this event long into the future. The questions that come to me most often is, how do we get to this very special place? And I want to go through very quick. We are not going to spend a lot of time here. We're just going to answer a lot of questions, but I want to go very quickly through this timeline of the last 5 years here at the Alamo. Starting in 2011, when the General Land Office took over oversight of the Alamo, many things have happened to get us to this place. Over the years and even over the past generation or so, we can speak to the fact that many things have been tried and many discussions have happened. What do we do with the Alamo? How can we make it better? How can we really think through the next 300 years and generations after us for our children and our grandchildren to make this experience better, so that the term "remember the Alamo" still is good and pure, and that it's not, is this it? Look at this little bitty church, because that's what we hear right now, and it's so much more than that. And those of you who are here, you're the ones who get that. So we are now in, I would say, about the 5th year of what is really hands-on state help. And this most recent year, we've just been sprinting the very first part of a marathon. And so in 2011, the General Land Office began the the oversight. A lot of studies happened. A lot of things happened in those first few years under Commissioner Patterson, repairing roofs and those types of things. You just heard from Kim Barker about the last year. Kim eats and sleeps and weekends and nights and mornings, and I'm not sure that you'll get any sleep for the next year either. All of the work that she's done over the last year, helping to be sure that we understand the preservation needs at the Alamo, has been really amazing to watch, and she's another person that deserves a lot of thanks and a lot of effort. So in 2014, something happened that made us all think, Phil Collins, a British rock star of all people, has a multi-million-dollar collection that he gave to the Alamo, and made us start thinking, there's not a museum at the Alamo. There's not a great visitor center at the Alamo. that began another groundswell. The city of San Antonio the same year began a discussion, how can we rethink the Alamo Plaza? Not talking to the state, not really. So it began to turn during those 2 years. In 2015, Commissioner Bush was inaugurated the first week of January. He began and had been thinking about this for a while. He reconstituted the Alamo Endowment Board with Red McCombs and Ramona Bass and Gene Powell and Lou Mormon. All of these things began to happen very quickly, and discussions finally, I think for those of us who love the Alamo, saw here is our chance to see this come together. I came on February 17th. My first day, Cheryl Scully comes up to me and she says, "You need to meet with me. We need to talk. The city and the state need to get together for the master plan." She meant that. Commissioner Bush, I called the next day, he said, "That's right, we need to get together." So last year, again, was this historic opportunity for the city and the state to work together. Who would have thought, after what we just heard from what happens in 1905 and what happens in 1911, that finally the state and the city are coming together to rethink this. It's happening again. In October, the partnership was then begun between the Alamo Endowment, a private entity capable of raising millions and millions of dollars for this project. The city, the state, signed the agreement to begin the master plan. That was almost a year ago. Meetings began immediately every week. We started talking, we started putting together the vision and the guiding principles of what does this need to be, what does the Alamo really deserve? And the answer to that is the world's best, the world's brightest, the dream team for the Alamo. So we put together the RFP with that in mind. We wanted the very best, not one historian, all of the very best historians, not one, but the best preservation and architects and landscape and heritage planners, all of them. Let's go out and find them and see if we can enlist them for this project. And that began back in October. So we went through interviews, talked a lot about this, and in April 5th, George Skarmeas came on board. Lewis Fisher with Fisher Heck, our local architect, came together. Lewis, wave, he's also somebody who knows all the answers to all the questions, or will. Began in earnest this master plan. We call it Reimagine the Alamo. Playing along also with Remember the Alamo, but reimagine the next 300 years. What can we do? What's possible? So we just got started. And it's very exciting. Every day we all learn something very new. And I can tell you from our conversations with Mark and I a lot, and Kim and some of the other people that are here, it's been interesting. We get a lot of great ideas. We get some ideas that are great to hear from you, ideas. But this is a very exciting time. It's an opportunity that we cannot waste. It's something that we will not take for granted. The people that are surrounding us, not just with the people whose passion for the Alamo and the history here, for all of the cultures and all of the people who have made and are a part of the history of the Alamo are playing a role, and it's very exciting. So these are some things in the last couple of years that have never happened here. So that's why we are so excited. That's why those of us who grew up in houses with Texas history teachers like my mom are so excited to hear what's happening the next day and what's coming. We don't know yet what's coming, and that's what George is going to give you a little bit about the process and how this will work, so that you can go out to your families and your communities and your constituencies and say, this is what's happening, and here's where you can find some answers. I put these, the next slide has all the places where you can find information. ReimagineTheAlamo.org is where we are posting news and YouTubes and Twitter feeds. In today's information age, you can get information right now. When we had the archaeology digs a couple months ago and last month, we posted every day a press conference, and that's still on our YouTube page. So if you want to keep up, that's how to do it. And Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, so there's always something going on, and that's where we keep our information. So with that, I'm also going to bring up George. George has become a great friend. He's taught me an awful lot. He is the principal and at PDP Architects, one of the greatest and most well-known preservation and heritage planning design firms. He can tell you a little bit more about that. Dominique, who couldn't be with us today. His partner and wife is working with us on this. So I'm going to go ahead and let him give you a little bit of what we've accomplished so far and a look into the timeline for the future. And then we'll be available for your questions.
Thank you. This is a great event because if you play back everything that was discussed today, you can connect a series of very important dots that we're dealing with every day as the master plan team. So we heard today about the multiple dimensions of the history of this place, everything from the pre-colonial period through today. We heard about the technical challenges that the GLO is dealing with in deferred maintenance, doing a series of preservation projects, the experts that are doing the HSR, the Historic Structure Report. We heard about all of the events that took place with the DRT and people trying to save the Alamo. And here's what I learned in the 4 or 5 months that I've been working here. I'm going to put a bet that there are more ideas and visions about what's going to be in the master plan than the people that are in this room. Every time somebody comes up to me and says, here's what you need to do. Somebody mentioned George Nelson's book with these incredible renderings. I had a person who came up to me and showed me the 1836 image and said, here it is. That's all you have to do. Build it. So 2 days ago, I was given a lift to bring my bike back from the bike shop. And the driver said to me, I said, what's happening? What's new around the Alamo? And he said, well, the GLO bought this building, the Indigo Hotel, is buying the federal building, and is going to buy the Emily Morgan. And I said, do you know what I do? He said, no. I explained to him who I am and what I do. I said, this is the first time I hear about any of these things. So here's the reality. You all care very deeply about this place. You love the Alamo. It is an incredible place with rich history. And you all want to see something incredible happen out of this process. And you do have very strong opinions because you all live in Texas. And most people think about the Alamo in terms of 1836. And they think about 1836 only in terms of a handful of days when this incredible event took place. And when we're talking with experts and other folks and greater audiences and people who come to us to talk about the project, I'm asking them one very simple question. The simple question is this: do you realize that this event, the Battle of the Alamo, changed the geopolitical structure of the Americas and defined the world the way we know it today? And most people look at it purely as a Texas event. In fact, it's a global event. And if you combine all of the dots that we heard about today, you realize why UNESCO came to realize that this is an incredible place, the missions and the Alamo, because they have a world history in addition to Texas history. So it's our obligation to understand all of these dimensions. So here's what we found. There are people who have spent their entire lives studying this place. Dr. Tijerina is one of them. He gave an incredible presentation about the dimensions of history here at the Alamo. There are people who have studied the building the way Pam Rosser has done, down to these little decorations. Louis, my partner, understands the site and has worked around in the site for a number of years. And we're now engaged for exactly 5 months trying to figure out the dimensions. And here's what we found. That there is not a single source that will tell us what happened over the course of hundreds of years of history at this place, how the missions came to be, how the site evolved over time, what was added, what was subtracted. We heard just a little piece about the 2 stories of the convento, or the romantic view of the garden and what happened during the WPA period. But we don't have a detailed history of how things were added, subtracted, changed over time, and so on, because we need that so we can make some informed decisions and tell you this is what needs to happen in terms of the master plan. We need to understand the cultural history of the place. And Louis and I literally are drinking from the fire hose. We have engaged a number of great people to help us. And Louis and our staff, together, the 2 firms, we developed a timeline. You will see it in the next couple of weeks. It's now 20 feet long, trying to figure out all the pieces. It is a very difficult puzzle. And it's a difficult puzzle that has dimensions above grade, and we heard from the team that does the HSR, from Chris Hudson. There are also things that happen below grade. There is archaeology. So what have we done over the last 5 months? We've tried to understand the history. We've tried to understand the architecture. We've tried to understand the archaeology. And we're trying to get ready also to report to you all again at the next public meeting of what we've found so far and what these things mean in preparing the master plan. Because everybody's going to ask the same question today. When will we get to see the master plan? And the answer is very simple, but it's very difficult for everybody to accept. We need to be a little patient, because we have only had 5 months to understand this very complex place before we put pencil on paper and say, here are the ideas. So we want to hear from you all at the next public meeting, your concerns, your feedback. And we want to have your help in developing the master plan ideas, which we'll do in the next 3 or 4 months. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to the GLO for this great event, and I'm going to open it for questions and anything else you would like to discuss. Thank you.
No questions.
It was noted earlier that we're soon going to see the 300th anniversary of San Antonio, and I'm wondering if that's playing into your thought about what the reimagination of the Alamo timeline should be, and if you can comment on that.
I can speak to our involvement with the Tricentennial Commission. San Antonio, for those who you don't, there's an office that is planning a 300-year anniversary of the city. And we, of course, don't have the master plan yet, but it is in our mind, and that timeline as far as when events, for example, may be happening around the city will be considered as a part of when we will be doing things on the site and where and that type of thing. But it's a consideration as far as planning those. It's just one of those bullets that we're going to have to address when we get to a timeline plan and things like that. But we do have operations people that are sit on that committee, and we'll be providing feedback when we get a little bit further down the road. There's also a Final Four that year and all kinds of stuff going on. So 17-18 should be a real interesting year for San Antonio. 2018. It was 18 too. 300 years later.
Right.
Oh, excuse me. You correctly summed up the concerns that people have about what's going to happen here in your taxi ride or whatever that was. I've heard everything from total reconstruction to basically just whitewash the place. You know, is there going to be a reconstruction? Are we going to see the Alamo risen from the ashes? Are we going to basically see the same image that we have with more details and more explanation of what took place here?
As I tried to say about 5 minutes ago, we haven't started the plan yet. We're trying to understand all of the issues, whether there's going to be any reconstruction, whether there's going to be any demolition, whether there's going to be any major change. We don't know what all of the ingredients, components of the plan will be, because we really have not put pencil on paper. To be responsible for and do our work in a responsible and a sensitive way, first we need to understand what we have. That's why we spend the first 5 months to understand the place very carefully before we start drawing and imagining. Once we do that, then we're going to have a second discussion about what is the right thing to do for this place, and share ideas and have a dialogue with everybody, including you. So to answer your question, we don't know yet.
I'm confused about what kind of footprint you're talking about for the Alamo. I know the GLO's acquired some lands. Are the lands that aren't acquired yet reachable through eminent domain? Are they, what kind of area are we talking about that's in play?
I can speak to the eminent domain. The General Land Office cannot go in and capture land through eminent domain. That's not legally possible. A lot of people have said that we can go in and take, but that's not going to be the case. No, sir. It also wouldn't be the right thing to do. There are other reasons, but we can't legally do that.
Let me answer the question in a simple way. Can we go back to any of the previous PowerPoint presentations? I think Kim Barker had in her presentation the actual perimeter of the mission. Am I correct, Kim? I think it's the next one that shows the relationship with the city. That one. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is how the original mission layout relates to the city itself. And if you look at this diagram carefully, you will find that pieces of the Alamo are under streets, are in the basements of buildings. A lot of pieces are gone, and so on. So, full stop. You go to a historic site. You go to places where, quote unquote, George Washington slept. And the docents will tell you that this is exactly the way it was when George Washington slept here. and you go to a place where reconstruction took place, and they will say to you, this is exactly the way it was as on March 6, 1836. So when I listen to all of you, and when I listen to the passion, to the level of significance you assign to this place, to the level of significance that is nationally and internationally assigned to this place, I can only think about the following things. Number one is we got to tell the truth. We got to do this right. In our business, we use the terms integrity and authenticity. We also need to do this in a way that can be reversible. Because if 10 years from now, somebody comes with better information than we have, they should be able to make the adjustment without impacting the historic resource. So the reason why we're so careful and so cautious, and we're doing this very detailed research, is because we want to understand this. So the archaeology that took place in the last 5-6 weeks is because we want to understand what can be recaptured below the roadways, what has been lost. Can we redefine the perimeter of the mission compound? What do we need to do? So this is a very difficult assignment, and we need to do this right, and we need to do it in a way that is exemplary, and we need to do it in a way that will result in a transformational experience for everybody who's going to come to visit the Alamo. So we cannot make up things. We cannot reconstruct things without the actual evidence. We need to have accuracy, integrity, and authenticity. That's why we're working so hard to figure out the answers to this question. Did I answer your question?
One question that we just had was, what's the budget for Reimagine the Alamo?
No idea.
No idea.
We don't know.
There's a question over here somewhere. The question was, what was the budget for Reimagine the Alamo? The answer, no idea.
We don't know.
It's too early.
It's too early.
It's too early.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of excitement about this kind of a project, especially San Antonio and Texas. What's your sense of the rest of the country, the rest of the world? Do they know about it? Do they know what's going on,
You know,
what we're planning?
One of the things that we found in just posting the archaeology on Facebook, those videos have been seen by, I think, 43,000 people. Watch these YouTube videos on archaeology at the Alamo, and they are all over the world. There was a lot of European interest. There's a lot, of course, the visitors. When we talk about tourism and people who come to the Alamo, our largest group of visitors are from Great Britain. We have a large and growing population from the East and from China and Japan. But there's a lot of interest in this because everybody remembers the Alamo. But there's also the new World Heritage designation puts that on the radar for people who quite literally go around the world just seeing World Heritage sites. So there is a new growing, of course, world interest in the story of the Alamo as well. So we see a lot of it. I can't give you exact numbers, but we've seen an uptick in international interest.
And we do get inquiries almost every day. And somebody suggested I would write a book about the questions we get. And I said I cannot do fiction because, people will never believe that I get these kinds of questions.
One more?
How much of what's going on with the Alamo is going to include the rest of the missions?
Well, of course, as a part of what we're talking about in partnership with the city. Most of the national parks own the missions. They are managed largely, some of the churches, by the Catholic Church. And so a lot of those questions is going to be a part of what we continue to discuss when we get further down the road on the master plan, but certainly the stories link together. But that's, again, another part of the next chapter of what we do to relate them together.
Time for one more question.
I think that's it.
I
Thank
would-
you all.
And if you want to, you can sign up for a newsletter on that website, reimaginethealamo.org. That's where we will post information on the next public meeting, and it will be, of course, live fed as well. So just invite you all to continue to be involved. Thank you.
That concludes the day portion. Thank you for choosing to spend your day with us. And there's a battleground tour at 5:30 and a reception at 7. Thank you.